Question of the day. What is your favorite video game IP made into a board game? Now, there's not a ton of them. Again, I talked about this. Mega Man broke my heart completely. Bloodborne was fantastic. Dark Souls was great. Today, we're talking about an IP that is a very high-level IP. It's AAA IP, I believe they call it. This is Horizon Zero Dawn, the board game from Steamforged Games. Plus, we're going to take a quick look at the Stormbird and Thunderjaw expansion as well. Now, this is a competitive map scrawling hunting game. Now, this isn't a dungeon crawl. You were hunting beasts and you were trying to come out with the most points at the end with the most glory for your tribe, essentially. So let's take a look at a quick overview. Now, I say quick overview, we're going to cover the bases of all the rules, but we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of every single rule. There are conditions that happen when maybe you get burned or frozen or shocked. All those things are deep dive rules that you can look into, but we're going to cover the basics of how you move, attack, all that sort of stuff when it comes to this game. And then we'll come back up, talk final thoughts when I come back. Alright, so here is Horizon Zero Dawn set up for the first encounter. This is with the Sawtooth encounter. Now, in the expansions, you have the Thunderjaw, which, my gosh, that's a huge miniature. Let me just show you for scale where we are here. Well, very, very big miniature. So I guess maxiture, I don't know what you'd call that. And then the other one is the Stormbird. I believe that's what it's called. I'm a little behind on my lore here. I got to finish this game. It's supposed to be amazing. But yeah, check out the Stormbird miniature. Humongous. It actually plays in two modes, whether it's on the ground or in the air, so very relative to the game. But your miniatures are very nice looking as well. So you've got this Nora character who looks suspicious like Aloy, somewhat. You will start on the starting tile based on what the encounter says. And you're going to set up the encounter based on which prey you're going after, which quarry you're going after. So we're going for the Sawtooth. That's currently the only one in the base game. However, like I said, Thunderjaw, Stormbird, and then I think Savage Lands is the other, Savage, whatever it's called. It adds more quarry that you can go for the Hunter's Call. Now this is kind of the final fight here. You'll go after the last one and fight it. Now, a couple things to note. On your character area down here, you have a character with armor and weapons. Now, ranged weapons take certain amount of ammo, which you will find in your deck over here. So these things here. It'll tell you how much it takes, tell you what dice to roll, if it adds a dice, what it does when it's critical hit. I love games, first of all, that tell you certain color dice to use for certain things, and you can upgrade them to get stronger dice. Those kind of rules are always a plus for me. So this is your character down here. There are 4 factions to choose from. We've got Nora down here. So you've got the spear as well for close-up. You've also got some armor down here that you'll use when dodging and avoiding damage. You'll roll that to mitigate damage, as well as critical hit there. Now on the board itself, this is set up per encounter. So each encounter you face, for instance, would be, so we have 6A, 4A, and 2A. The circle here shows where you start. The letters on the bottom left show which enemies start on which spawn points, and if there's any special terrain, and if you destroy all the enemies, how many glory points you get. Now this is a competitive game which you're fighting to get the most points. So you see closely on the board here this purple section and the way the arrows point. These enemies will follow that section on the board and move along this track. So if you never encounter them, they potentially will go off the board and you'll lose the ability to destroy them and potentially get points and salvage right here. So these are things that give you abilities to craft ammo and stuff. So the goal is to destroy these enemies in the encounters. Once the encounter's over, you'll move on to a little section of cleanup in which you'll get to upgrade, you'll get to visit a merchant, you'll get to trade in the stuff that you've gotten in order to buy better stuff, so that by the end at the Hunter's Call, which will be when the end of the event deck is done, you'll be ready to fight whatever the major quarry is. Now, the enemies will move, once they become aware of you, they'll move a little bit differently and they'll start to engage you. And they all have a deck of cards that show kind of how they engage. So there's the Sawtooth that has quite a few cards, the Shell Walker, but the Watcher, it's pretty straightforward. It says if there's non-alert enemies within 2 squares, yes, it'll move towards the closest non-alert enemy. It will then alert, potentially, other enemies. No, move to 1 towards the closest hunter and then attack melee. You'll see that's kind of how they all attack. It's an if-then conditional sort of statement. Another enemy within 2 squares, a yes or no, and then you follow it out. So it's pretty easy AI to follow. But again, they're not alert until you make them alert or another enemy makes them alert, but they could potentially go off the map. Each encounter is all about defeating as many enemies as you can. But again, while I said it's a competitive game, you're trying to defeat as many before the enemies. This isn't something like, oh, you take that one, I'll take that one. Now you can potentially work it out where it's like, hey, let's somewhat work together until we need to, break off. But essentially, you're going to be doing that until it's time to fight. Now, the enemy cards here show some interesting stuff. This is all the stats on the right-hand side for each enemy, what they do. So, warning call. While this enemy is alert, any non-alert enemies in the adjacent square become alert at the end of its activation. So, again, this thing will alert other enemies. On the back here, it's non-alert. Here, alert. When it's non-alert, it will just follow the path. Some of them, though, contain different pieces and components that you could attack. So just like in the game, there's a blaze canister on the back of the Strider. You can attack this specifically instead of attacking the enemy for damage. If you do this, the enemy suffers fire damage. Now that applies all the way across. I'm going to show you for the Thunderjaw here because it's got quite a lot of options. For the 1 and 2 player here, you've got A, B, C, D, 4 different components that you could explode and blow up with different health amounts. But again, he's got 50 health by himself. You're going to be looking to blow these up, and when you do, it disables certain attacks that they have, making the enemy weaker. So you're going to kind of want to whittle it down instead of going straight for the damage. Essentially, when you do your actions, you can sneak, which is you move 1 square. You can sprint, which is move 2 squares, but enemies that you are adjacent to, give or take, will become alert. You can distract, which is pull an enemy towards you. You could then perform a range attack or a melee attack. Now you're going to get to do 2 attacks on you, or 2 actions on your turn. The enemies will act, and then it will repeat. Then, once each encounter is over, you'll move on to the next one after doing the campfire phase. You'll check the victory, total the glory points, and allocate sun tokens. Those sun tokens, again, all that can be spent on upgrading your character. Now, you have a deck of cards here, but you also have cards that you can upgrade and get better stuff with. So, which is nice that you have the ability, so 1s, 2s, and 3s, to kind of pump up your character. As well as all of these merchant cards over here. These are level 1 merchant cards. Just a ton of stuff to make your characters even better. Shock wires, all these different things from the game that really add flavor, but also really make your character better. As well as kind of a tech tree here, essentially showing what you get when you move up a level and such. So as you progress along and get to the Hunter's Call, you'll be getting better and better and better. Then the person with the most glory points at the end will win that campaign. But again, yes, it's competitive. No, it's not cooperative. And yes, you're going to be going for an actual winner, but the experience is different in this than a Euro game in which you're all building your engines and hopefully doing it. This is more about, okay, that person attacked them, so let me go and attack as well. Again, there are more rules to show and talk about, minute things as far as terrain and range and line of sight, all that stuff, but there's no point in me trying to show you every little thing in this because as an overview, you're going to forget it all, and you're going to need to read the rules anyway. But it does flow. Like the mechanics make sense and they do flow once you start playing it. You understand that even though it's daunting, and this is a very thick rule book, 51 pages, it doesn't feel like a 51-page rule book because there's a lot of white area in there. And so, yes, it really kind of breaks down how it plays. And my only gripe is that it doesn't start with the setup until well into page 20 here. So you're learning the backstory, not backstory, but what enemies do, what cards do, what conditions are, and then finally at page 20, you're going to get to setting up the game. So play it out. Person with the most glory, fight the quarries, giant beast, very thematic. Lots of really cool things when it comes to taking the enemies down piece by piece. The ammo system's great. The item system's great. Just a really cool interpretation of Horizon Zero Dawn. So that is Horizon Zero Dawn, the board game from Steamforged. Now, first and foremost, the game is amazing looking. Now, I think we knew this was going to be the case. Steamforged never slouches when it comes to their miniatures, but also the board looks great. It really feels reminiscent. The cards look good. The item cards look good. The character art looks good. Every bit of this game is just dripping and oozing from the Horizon Zero Dawn world, but it looks so good, especially the scale they chose. I'm so glad they chose to go with the scale they did because your miniatures are very small. And it makes the enemies look that much more impressive. So when you put your character next to the Thunderjaw, like I did in the video right before it fell apart, the base fell off, I haven't glued it, it looks amazing. Having that scale really translates from the game really well. And so having that into the board game is fantastic. So let alone the look of the game, the art components, all that sort of stuff, just it works. When you pass this game by a table, you go, oh, hey, is that Horizon? and it instantly pops. People see this and they love the way it looks. There's nothing wrong with the art at all in this game. Fantastic looking game. The art direction, there are a lot of symbols. It kind of reminds me of a Gotham City Chronicles that you can actually learn pretty easily. So, there's a deep cut reference there for you. But it has a lot of symbols. Each of the symbols mean certain things, but all in all, the diagrams of the cards and what they do in the rule book are really well done. Learning how, what this is on a card, what this means, when it's defense, when it's offense, what this does to an enemy. If you do this, is the tear value or the total value. All that sort of stuff is explained really well. Only thing I'd knock is there aren't any reference cards. The only reference you get really is on the back of the rule book. Now granted, it's a full phase routine rules reference, but it would be nice to have a character reference card for each player as well. Just a little stickler thing of mine. If there's extra card room, if there's not, whatever, just print some regardless. It's one of those things that just a little bit of expense goes a long way for me. Again, the game looks amazing. I like the way it plays. If you watch my Destiny's review, somebody did a review of my Destiny's review, which was pretty fun. I knocked it because it was competitive and not cooperative. Here, I feel the exact opposite. If there's a cooperative variant, but I really think this is so meant to be competitive. Like, it feels better competitive because you're fighting for those beasts. You're fighting for the items that they drop, all that sort of stuff. It makes so much more sense as a competitive nature. And again, it kind of ties into the tribes in the game itself. So all in all, the game it benefits from being what it is and knowing what it is and knowing that it is a competitive, quick fight hunting game. Again, you're not diving into a dungeon looking for a beast master and hoping that he can help you find an item and bring it to the old lady at the cave. None of that's happening. You're just fighting these monsters, getting what they drop, and then going till you fight the big boss at the quarry. Now that can seem a little formulaic, except for there's a little bit of variation in the fact that you can upgrade your character differently. Each time you play, you can pick a different character to play, and you can upgrade them differently. Plus, there are the Stormbird, Thunderjaw, and then the other expansion that I have that's not on this video. Just all sorts of options and replay with this game. But again, if you think if playing the same type of game where you're hunting and fighting could get tedious, it can, except the one thing I would caution you is that in a good way, is that the combat stuff moves so quickly. Never does it get bogged down and like, all right, you roll, now I roll. What's the difference? Okay, do I apply this? It's very quick. And what I really love, absolutely think is a tremendous fact, is the very much true to the game, blowing up pieces off of the actual monsters themselves, or excuse me, the beasts themselves, and seeing, you can't use that gun anymore, you can't use this anymore, or boom, you've got fire damage because I blew up that fire thing on your back. To me, that's a real win. So if you're a fan of the games, this is a 100% win right here. Go get Horizon Zero Dawn. If you're not a fan of the games, this is still a really great action-adventure game in which you're fighting and hunting and beating each other. One other thing I want to mention, I love how fast this game sets up, and I love how fast it tears down. That's rare for a game of this weight, size, etc. And yet this one does it perfectly. It goes on the table quickly, and it comes back into the box very quickly, and I'm a huge fan of that. Anytime you can speed up the process of getting a bigger game to the table, it's such a win. So having the ability to get this one on the table really quick, but especially getting it off the table really quick, is such a win for me. So I'm Bryan Drake here on the Dice Tower. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, etc. at Dice Tower Bryan. Can't say enough good things about Horizon Zero Dawn, the board game. Go check it out. I really think you'll enjoy this. I'm Bryan Drake. See you next time.